Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So in my very first intro video, I sort of hinted at not only giving you guys overall movement and fitness tips, but nutrition as well. In fact, nutrition is an aspect that I'm looking to cover now, and that's where my primary focus is as far as overall fitness and wellness in my career is concerned. So I'm going to be talking today about macros and what they are, how they play a role in your fitness goals, how you can work them to really make sure everything's dialed in and that you're feeling good, and overall eating a well-balanced meal day in and day out for every meal throughout the day. So as somebody who used to be 287 pounds, I know the struggle with food all too well. I felt like throughout my 10 years of CrossFit and fitness in general, food has been the hardest thing for me. I even went as far as setting it as my New Year's resolution year after year, and this is the only year where I finally have a better understanding of it. And that better understanding gives me the greatest peace of mind, because I know for a fact that everything that I do in the gym will actually work towards my fitness goals. And as somebody who used to be 287 pounds, I used to be afraid of eating when I got injured or when I had to take time off from the gym to study for exams back in college. Now that I know how much food I should be eating, I feel so at ease about it. And I know that all I have to do is show up at the gym, do my best, and that I'll continue moving towards my goals. So to me, as someone who used to be overweight, that's super important. And it's not just important in the way of performance, but it's important in the way of moving forward with my life in general. As we all know, earlier this year, the whole world shut down due to COVID-19, and a lot of people, myself included, especially in the fitness realm, would continue to eat the way that they normally would if they were working out, but they didn't have access to a gym. So that being said, you can expect some weight gain to happen. But it's not the end of the world when you know exactly how much food you should be eating and what types of food you should be eating. And just because you're tracking your macros doesn't mean that you have to stop enjoying the food that you normally like to enjoy. So on that note, we have a whole lot of holidays that kind of revolve around eating food. And I always tell my nutrition clients to make sure that they're enjoying and to not track on holidays. In fact, I told each and every one of my nutrition clients for Thanksgiving to just enjoy, but make sure to track the day before and the day after so that they can have a little frame of reference, but also just kind of let go for a day and enjoy. So as I mentioned earlier, it's all about being able to kind of cater your lifestyle towards your nutrition, or the other way around. That being said, I'll never, ever, ever recommend that you stop eating a certain thing. I definitely have a sweet tooth, and I like to indulge a little bit here and there throughout the week, but I just make sure to indulge in moderation so I can still get my fix, but it won't hurt me in terms of my overall goals, which is pretty much performance as far as my workouts go. That being said, I never want anyone to have to feel like they're on vacation and they're, at their grandmother's house and they have to not eat what everyone else is eating because they're trying to stay on their fitness goals. I know what it's like to be on the other end of that, and it makes you just feel excluded when the whole purpose of gathering for holidays is to feel included. So it's really important to make sure that you can still enjoy the things that you enjoy, but also being a little bit mindful, which is entirely possible. And the best part about that is your favorite foods never really go out of style. There's no fad behind the diet. You get to enjoy what you want to enjoy as long as you do it in moderation here and there. So that being said, guys, a quick overview of macros are your proteins, carbs, and fat. And what protein does is it aids in repair, and it gives you an overall baseline in your body. So your body needs protein to function in general, whether you're working out or not. And if you're working out, your body needs even more to not only maintain that baseline, but to also make those gains that we're all working for. Carbs are used for energy. There's a number of different carbs that you can have, and they all play a different role in your workouts depending on when you have them, what types you have, so on and so forth. But you can think of carbs as your energy source. Fats are good for not only maintaining satiety, they're also good for hormone regulation and just making sure that your body's functioning at its best. So that aside, how can we track macros? I like to go through two different general forms of software. One of them is an app. It's MyFitnessPal, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of it or even used it before. Super easy way to just kind of keep track of the foods that you're eating and see how they play a role into your daily protein, carbs, and fat intake. That being said, Getting used to that app is super efficient because it gives you a baseline and then you can kind of adjust from there. But one of the issues I found with MyFitnessPal is that the numbers it gives you aren't exactly accurate. So I feel that it's important to pair it with this website called tdeecalculator.net. So if you know your body fat percentage, which you can get from a DEXA scan, that's DEXA, what I believe to be one of the most accurate scans, and it'll run you about $45-50. You get your percentage and you can input that into that website I just mentioned and get your metrics from there. So it'll give you a few different tables, and based on your goals you can start using those tables to your advantage. But if you essentially have your numbers from that website and then use the app to help get you there, it'll help you understand exactly where you should be. If you need to make any adjustments once you understand what your body feels like at those macros for, I'd say, about 3 weeks, and then kind of move forward from there. Alright guys, so now that I've given you a brief overview on macronutrients, it's time to dial in and get a little bit more in depth. And I'm going to start with our body's most important building block, protein. So, taking it from the top down, what protein does for the body is it's needed to maintain bodily functions and structures. And for those of you guys who are working out, you need it to build muscle. I mean, we all know that there's a plethora of protein supplements out there. Whey protein is a great example, and a lot of us take it, but we're not sure exactly what it does. We only know that we need it. So, brief overview, our body again needs protein to just maintain its normal functions and to make sure that our structures are intact. So what that means is all the ligaments in your joints, they also need protein in order to function at their best, in addition to building muscle and just making sure that you're feeling right and that your body's functioning at its best. So that being said, what happens if we don't have enough protein? Well, unfortunately, our body will start to cannibalize itself if we don't have enough protein. So to my population out there that might be overtraining or feeling like your recovery is way slower than it needs to be, chances are you're not getting enough protein. In fact, every one of my nutrition clients that I've spoken to, and most people in general, are under eating protein. And I was guilty of that when I first started tracking my macros. And I did notice a big increase in my performance and my overall well-being as soon as I started to start tracking my protein and getting an idea of how much I exactly needed. And when I first got my macros, I still needed to adjust those numbers until something felt right with a certain number. So at that point, I just began to chase that a little bit more. Alright guys, so I know I just mentioned that your body will cannibalize itself if you don't have enough. And the reason for that is to make sure that your body functions at that baseline, so it'll start to borrow from other places. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen, you need to make sure that you're getting enough in. That being said, I'm going to talk about protein statuses, but I want to let you know that proteins are always broken down and used by the body to maintain your baseline, to maintain the structure in your joints, etc. That being said, you always want to make sure that you're in a state of building more than you are in a state of breaking down. So there's 3 statuses, as I mentioned, that I want to briefly touch on, and one of them is a neutral protein status. So that means that all the food that you're taking in equals the amount that your body is breaking down as far as protein is concerned. Positive, as you can imagine, is anabolic, and I know a lot of people out there have heard that term before. So the first thing that comes to mind when you hear anabolic is probably like anabolic steroids. That essentially means anabolic means you're building. So that means that you're going to be taking in more protein than you're breaking down, which is exactly where you want to be. Now, if you're a negative, you can assume that that is kind of breaking down more than you're taking in, and then that's when you start to get into that body cannibalizing, which is the zone that you want to stay away from. Alright guys, so as we near the end of the video, I just kind of wanted to talk about a few facts. So I mentioned before that most people undereat protein, and I was definitely guilty of that, and noticed a big increase in my overall performance and mood when I started to meet those protein numbers that my body should have been having all along. I know I mentioned that I've been doing CrossFit, or I've been involved in fitness a little over 10 years. And strength has always been an uphill battle for me, and I finally feel like I'm making progress in that department because I'm making those protein needs happen every single time. So that being said, if you're wanting to get more protein in but you don't really know how to start, I like to take what's called a periodization approach. So what that means is from the very beginning of your day, just being a little bit more mindful to get protein in with every meal or every time you sit down and eat. So that might look like some Greek yogurt for breakfast, or maybe adding in some eggs, or just a small serving of meat if you're a meat eater at every meal, just to make sure that you're building on that. Because the last thing you want to do is have a big chunk of food that you need to eat by the end of the day, because I understand that some people aren't big eaters, and that's cool. But making sure you get that little bit of protein in as you're moving throughout your day is going to mean that at the end of the day, you've hit those numbers and that you're really working towards those goals. So, that being said, I want to talk about a few important things, and they're things that have come up in my own experience. So, one of them is you can't out-train and under-eat and expect results in the gym. So, as I mentioned, strength for me was always an uphill battle, and I felt like no matter how hard I trained, I wasn't really getting the results I wanted, and it was because I wasn't having enough protein. So, again, super, super important that you guys make sure you get your protein in every single day. That being said, overtraining on low protein can lead to, without lack of a better word, injury. So I experienced this when I was training way too hard. So I'd say about 2.5, 3 hours in the gym every day. I was in the gym, which is about 5 days a week, and I was practicing intermittent fasting, and I was most likely under eating because of how busy my life was. Now, I do recommend intermittent fasting, and I'll make a video on that at a future date, but under eating and overtraining will mean that you're constantly in that cannibalizing state for your body, and what that does is it starts to break things down to a certain point where you're not even recovering anymore, and you're just pushing yourself through based on willpower, and that's when things get a little dangerous. So that's something I wanted to throw out there from the very beginning, something you guys should work to avoid. Always make sure you have your protein, listen to your body, and if you're really sore, maybe spend the day stretching instead of going for that next workout and then eating more based on how you're feeling. If you feel your recovery is a little slow, that's usually a chance that you should, a sign that you should add a little bit more protein in to make sure that you're going to be working towards that better recovery, thereby getting more workouts in. So real quick, we all know that we need protein at this point and how important it is in your overall function as well as how it performs in your workout. But what does protein look like? So for you meat eaters out there, myself included, protein comes in the form of lean meats. So we're talking chicken, lamb, that kind of thing. Poultry as well, so any kind of chicken, turkey, different types of turkey too. So like ground turkey is really good, and you can make it in a ton of different meals, or it comes in different ways that you can kind of make it appealing. It's really all about how you season your meat, as long as you stay away from salt. That aside, it can come in the form of seafood, dairy, eggs, and really the second half of protein sources goes out to my vegetarian crowd. So I love Greek yogurt, especially the type that's high in protein and low in fat, and it's kind of an acquired taste, but it's a really strong source of protein. So I'll make sure to get a little bit of that usually every morning. I'll usually gravitate towards eggs as well, just to make sure that my protein's starting to build from the very beginning of my day. Nuts are a very good way to getting your protein in as well, but they're also high in fat. So I'm going to get into fat at a later video, but it's really important to account for that kind of stuff as you're getting your protein in if you are a vegetarian and you don't gravitate towards actual meat. In addition to nuts, we have beans and legumes. Those are also great sources of not only protein, but fiber as well, and they do offer a little bit of carbs. So again, just making sure you take that into account for your protein sources. In addition to that, we have supplements. So I know I hinted at whey protein earlier in the video, and I use whey protein, but I use it as kind of a gap filler. Because if you're as busy as I am, it's not always possible to get your protein in through just meals, and that's when whey protein can be an excellent way of just kind of boosting you up throughout the day, maybe having a shake at some point when you know your next meal is pretty far off to just fill in the gap. But I wouldn't gravitate towards it as a meal replacement by any means. That being said, so going back to my vegetarian crowd, I want to touch up on one really important thing, and it's to be aware of excess soy products. So I'm going to start with you ladies. So ladies, if you're going to have a lot of soy, one thing to be aware of is that it's going to boost your estrogen. So all the effects that you would normally feel from your just overall hormones will be enhanced. So you might be a little bit more short-tempered, that kind of thing. So it's really important to be aware of having too much soy, because although it is a great source of protein, it's nice to have every once in a while. And then guys, you'll also get an estrogen boost. So testosterone will start to drop as well, which is our primary hormone for muscle building. So soy's cool, but not a lot of it. that aside, it's not impossible for vegetarians or vegans to get their protein sources, because I know there's a lot of plant-based protein supplements out there to kind of take that take the replacement of that whey protein as a gap filler. You can get creative by making different meals with all kinds of alternatives that they have out there nowadays. Really, if you do your research, you'd be surprised at what you'd find. So that being said, last thing I want to touch up on, guys, is that the foods that do offer some protein for my non-meat eaters, just make sure that you're taking into account how much fat they offer, as well as how much carbs come along with those protein sources as well. Because the last thing you want to do is work to get that protein, but eat too much fat and carb to the point where you're now eating to support body fat. Something to be aware of. All right, guys, so that just about wraps it up for my spiel on protein. It's really important that you get it in, but it's also really important to be aware of what types you're getting and then how they play a role into your overall nutrition by the end of the day. So if you guys liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. I'll be dishing out a new video every week. The next video will cover carbohydrates, our energy source, so really important you guys tune in for that. Also, in addition to liking and subscribing, I also offer one-on-one nutrition coaching as well as performance coaching as well. So please check the links down in the description if you feel like you can benefit from these. I'd be more than happy to work with you and just kind of figure out not only what your goals are, but how we can start working your lifestyle to aim towards those goals. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you on the next video.